start recording too. Hey everybody, it's Frankie-Lou. Just had a little technical difficulty, but it wouldn't be one of my live streams if we didn't. Let's say goodbye to our techie wizard. Bye, Agus. Welcome to the greenhouse in the sky. As you can see here, it does actually feel like spring. Hi, Sajal. Great to see you there. I hope that you'll have lots of questions for me today. Yes. We're getting lots of sunlight. Everything in here is going crazy. It's amazing. I was away for 4 days and I couldn't believe how much stuff had grown in that time. And for those of you who are actually winter sowing, I actually got my first germination outside. You can't see it from here, but just to the out the corner there is where Mount Milk Jug is, where I currently have about 80 jugs. And milk jugs all planted up, ready to go. And I saw the first bit of my germination today. So that's always a really exciting moment. And but my number one thing I want to say to you today, because I did ask for questions in advance from folks, and I'm getting a lot of questions about why am I not seeing germination yet? Oh my gosh, it's snowing. What's going to happen? So I guess the first thing I want to say to everybody today is the whole reason for winter sowing is to not fuss and not worry. I know that there are little green babies and we want to take care of them, but honestly, the whole point of winter sowing is to let Mother Nature do that for you. And I see people who are like, oh, I have too much snow. I saw a picture today and all I could see were the little holes on the tops and showing through the snow. And they're like, is that okay? I'm like, perfect, insulated and moisture. Oh, I'm in Fort McMurray and all my jugs had dry on top soil. Still, I have ice around them also. Should I pour water in or I have to start over? You shouldn't have to start over, Shazal, because if it's still frozen, you're not going to have that germination yet. And it's really when germination occurs that you're going to really need to make sure it's moist. So if it is still frozen, maybe if they're actually frozen to the ground, though, you will want to move them. Because then if you do have moisture coming through, it's not going to be able to drain. Does that make sense? And what you can do is take them off. Like if they're frozen to the ground, you will want to carefully kind of pry them off the ground and then feel how heavy they are. If they're light, yes, put them in a basin of water to water. Don't try to pour water on top, because if you do have, well, it might be okay to do that now, but if you pour water on top, you could disturb the soil, any germination that's starting to occur. So I know a lot of people mist and spray, but I always advise with milk jugs, bottom watering. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. But you keep those questions coming because that's what I'm here for, to answer them. So milk jug planting is on most folks' agenda right now. And there's a good reason for that, because it is prime time. I've also seen tons and tons and tons of questions, like 3 or 4 a day, people asking me, is it too late? Is it too late? No, in fact, in some ways, right now, end of March, beginning of April is the sweet spot where you can milk jug plant, still be doing your hardy perennials, because you're still going to get at least 6 weeks of freezing cold nights if you're in zone 3. I should clarify that. If you're in these cooler conditions like we are here, like any of my friends in Alberta, you're still good for doing hardy perennials. Anybody here along the mountainside in BC, you're still good for doing hardy perennials. Anywhere in Manitoba, anyone in Saskatchewan, still good for hardy perennials. But you could also be doing your more hardy vegetables. All your vegetables could go out now. And you can also start on your tender stuff, like the more tender stuff you're non-heat loving. Now would be a good time to do that. So where up until now, and I started winter sowing in like late February, up until now, I've been like making sure I'm putting stuff out in sequential order from started only doing hardy stuff. Now I'm working on tender stuff. But if I wanted to put out anything, I could put it out now. Okay, so it's a great time. If you're a newbie, if this is new to you, Perfect. And actually, when I first started winter sowing, it was the end of March. And I put a bunch of stuff out and everything worked great. And I was like, yay! Now I know that I can start it earlier because, as I said, I have 80 jugs out there and I will have several hundred jugs between the two homesteads by the time winter sowing season is over. So I like to pace myself. But if you're not able to dedicate, like I like to dedicate like an hour here, an hour there. But if you're like hardcore and you're like, I'm just going to do like 20 jugs in one day and just get it done, now is the sweet spot. Now is the time to do that. So I've seen so many questions about that. Is it okay to still do it in terms of timing? Yes. Is it okay to do it if I don't have snow? Yes. Okay, snow is great. Snow is wonderful, but it's not essential to winter sowing. It's like the best part. It's kind of like the cherry on top of the icing. If you got snow, that's great, but you don't need snow. Okay, what you do need is cold. So I always say if I'm still having to wear a jacket at night, if I'm getting close to freezing temperatures or below freezing temperatures at night, that's great. That's a perfect time to winter sow. And I know that here in the Golden Homestead, we're looking at our last frost around the end of May. So I've still got a good 8 weeks left of cold nights, which is still good for my hardy perennials. Okay, you do need the cold for the cold stratification, right? That's what's helping your seed to germinate. So, but one of the reason the snow is good is because for excellent, for the best kind of cold stratification, you require both cold and moisture. So the snow is providing the moisture, but if it's rain, that's providing it too. I get a lot of folks asking, they haven't watched a video yet and they want to get started and they think they leave the caps on. No, you want to have that cap open. And I know that might seem counterintuitive because, well, isn't that meaning that once the seedlings come up, it's going to be too cold? No, you need to have that moisture and that air coming in. So leave your caps off. If you got snow, that's great. And so I've got people at either end, some saying, I have no snow, and others saying, I can't see my jugs because they're all under snow. If your jugs are all under snow, you're not going to have germination yet. Even if they did start to germinate, your seedlings should be okay. They likely haven't started to yet. Like, as I said, I just had my first germination today, and I've noticed most people have only had germination for a week or two. If you don't have germination yet, please don't worry. It changes every year when I'm going to get germination. And I only have 3 of my 80 jugs germinated right now. It's like the first day. We had a couple inches of snow last night, and I thought, I'm going to go look anyways, and sure enough, there was germination in there. So if you have snow, it's great because the snow will give you more precipitation, more moisture in their jugs, and then you won't have to water as often when it does come time to watering. But if you don't have snow, not the end of the world. Oh, we got a hi, Dave. Southwest Ontario, I think you got a little bit nicer growing conditions than I do. I know a lot of folks who have joined this group from Ontario when they moved to the prairies because they don't know what to do. I'm so glad you've joined us, and I hope that you're going to do some winter sowing too. But also, if you have any questions about the wonderful greenhouse, we can talk about that as well. And I also wanted to talk today about garden prep because I know a lot of folks are starting to think about that. So that was my number one questions I wanted to answer today. I always think of this time of the year as when I basically spend half my time talking anxious winter sowers off the ledge because they're just like, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Just take a deep breath. Maybe drink some water out of a milk jug. Be calm. Ooh, 13 degrees Celsius. Well, isn't that lovely in Windsor, Ontario? We do actually, in Alberta, those of you who are viewing from Alberta, especially in the Chinook zone, know that we can get those temperatures too for a day or two, and then it goes back to freezing. We had that happen this last week. We had beautiful temperatures, and then it went down, and it snowed like crazy. There's like a foot of snow there right now. But everything is fine. Those of you in the Calgary area, please don't worry. Oh, Carla asked, do I get rodents in the greenhouse? That's an excellent question. I saw evidence of one rodent in here recently, but it seems to not be around anymore. We do leave in the summer, the doors open, so there is the ability for them to come and go. But the other person who comes and go, my fluffy friend, and I planted this is a draw to get Boo in here. Boo is my rodent exterminator extraordinaire. She's my 12-year-old cat, and she patrols this area quite happily in the summer when there is a possibility of getting rodents in here. So we haven't had that issue in here. We do have to keep an eye on it with the coop. The coop is another story. When we muck out in the spring, there's often a lot of rodents in there, and the cat waits when I'm mucking it out. The the mice, specifically mice, but we haven't had a problem with it in here. If that's your question, making sure we have our cat around definitely helps with that. Okay, so we had the questions about the winter sowing. We when it comes now timing, we talked about that. Oh. So I'm getting a lot of questions this week about winter sowing, things like the heat lovers, like tomatoes and squash and even peppers. Peppers are a little trickier, but all those sort of warm-loving cucumbers, warm-loving things. You can winter sow with those heat lovers, but with in zone 3 in a difficult area like this. I bet you in Windsor you could get away with just straight on winter sowing those. But when it comes to the colder climates, if you want to winter sow things like tomatoes, cukes, squash, I found the best results are with what I call the cheat method, where these milk jugs, of course, for the life of me, I can't see one right now. They're everywhere, but not when I need one right now. The milk jugs are a wonderful propagation chamber. Okay, so even here in the greenhouse, I have started some stuff in milk jugs, especially things that I'm trying, that I'm trying to propagate from cuttings. Those milk jugs are the best things. I've got some brassicas right now that I did cuttings from, and they're rooting up so nicely in the milk jugs. But because it's a great propagation chamber and it has diffused light, which it's like not going to be too harsh, what I do with my tomatoes is I start them in the milk jugs around now. I put them out when it's nice and sunny and bright during the day, and if it's going to get cold at night or cold during the day, I bring them in. I know that does sound like a lot more work than standard milk jug planting, but it's less work than starting them under lights, because you really only have to pay attention to them once a day to take them in or out. Well, twice a day, sorry, in and out. But whereas if you're starting milk jugs with under lights inside, you're constantly having to monitor things like, oh, look, a milk jug just miraculously appeared for me here. So here's one that I accidentally recently took some seedlings out, because like I said, I do start things in the greenhouse in milk jugs because they're so great. Oh, hi, Jen. I'll get to your question in just a second there. So these are great propagation chambers. So I still do tomatoes like this, and cukes and zucchini. Put them outside during the day in the sun so they get that. And if it's going to be cold, I bring them in at night. It's less work than moving trays around and hardening off and having to make sure your water is right and having to make sure your lighting is at the right level and having a fan on. It's still less work. It's not as easy as standard winter sowing, but it will work. All right, what have we got there? So is it better to direct sow? Oh, excellent question, Jen. Is it not better to direct sow squash and cucumbers? I find I've done both, and I still do both. I've got some cukes that I'm direct sowing, but I'm also going to start some in the winter sowing because I find that they don't like to have their roots disturbed. Absolutely right. So if you are going to do cukes, and sometimes with people when they have a shorter growing season, they still do want to start them. Like honestly, when I'm growing in Cochrane, sometimes I have only there's been summers where I've had less than 90 days between frosts. So, and cukes are heat lovers, so I found that I often still do like to get starts going with cukes and squash, and especially winter squashes. There's no way I'm going to get a full-grown pumpkin if I don't get a head start. Okay, so yes, they prefer direct sowing, definitely. But as long as you don't overplant in the milk jug, like for instance, if I was going to be planting cukes in here, the max I would put in here is 4, so that I could carefully remove them without disturbing the roots too much. If you're going to put 8 in here, you're going to be disturbing your roots and you're going to have a problem with that. Okay, you might even, or you could even try those with the snug method that I showed recently, where we do a seed snail inside a milk jug. I'm really excited about how those are coming along, so I'm excited about that. But yes, with those heat lovers, you do want to make sure they're not getting too cold. They're not going to appreciate a frosty night. So, do I have, okra. I would think that's probably a cheat method, because okra is, so Sajal is asking about okra, whether that would be cheat. I haven't grown it myself, but now I'm thinking I should do it in the greenhouse here. That would be fun because we can grow year round in here. Thank you for that suggestion. Oh, I got goosebumps. I love okra and I've never grown it before. So I'm going to have to give that a try this year. But okra I would definitely, because it is a heat lover. It likes it, and it needs a long season. So if you were going to try winter sowing that, I think that you would definitely want to do that with a cheat, where it's only out when it's warm, bring it in when it's cold. Okay, thank you for that question, because now I have a new project. Okay, so with that cheat method, a thing that can really help you with that cheat method, and I was trying to explain this to somebody on the keyboard today, and I'm like, okay, how am I going to explain this? One of the reasons this greenhouse works so great is because we built the thermal mass up. We have got lots of things in here to catch the sun's energy during the day, and then it slowly releases it at night. So what we want to do with this cheat method, I used to do it on my homestead. I had a black like a black granite countertop outside, because I had an outdoor kitchen next to the south side of the house. So you can imagine black granite house, the amount of thermal mass that built on that surface during the day on a hot sunny day was incredible. So I could put those tomatoes on there and know that even I did a few times accidentally forget to bring them in at night, that thermal mass maintained a pretty consistent temperature for my tomatoes and my cukes and my squash that I was starting that way at night. So if you're going to do the cheat method for winter sowing, you know how I always say, usually make sure you have it exposed out in the open, getting lots of precipitation. And if you're going to do the cheat method, this is another cheat, you want to be putting it somewhere where it's south facing and maybe has this thermal mass. Like if you have a rock, like a stone surface you can put it on, that would be a good choice. If you have a south facing wall, cheat method works best along that. I hope that's, I got a couple more questions here. Oh, okay, Dave. That's not fair. 220 days frost-free last year. Now you're just bragging. I liked you up until now. That's wonderful. Yes, it is a wonderful place to grow. Good for you. You could probably grow okra without any cheating. Thanks for sharing that. That's great. It's almost like you don't need a greenhouse, right? Oh, Jen, I'm attempting loofah this year, hoping to get a good warm September. Yeah. Okay, so Jen, I have had a lot of friends in Calgary, which is even worse than here, been able to grow loofah. It is doable. You're right. Get it a good start inside. I'm a food nerd. I don't grow things unless I can eat them. Peanuts. Okay. I think, Dave, you're not making many friends here. That's great. Wonderful. Well, I'm growing figs, but it's in my greenhouse. That's wonderful. We grow peanuts sometimes inside. But yes, loofah can be grown in these harsh conditions. But yeah, Jen, do give it that head start. I don't normally grow anything unless I can eat it. So I haven't grown it. People are always trying to give me seeds. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not interested. I know it's a beautiful plant, and it is a beautiful plant. People really find it quite interesting to look at. So I hope you have fun with it. Mr. Show Off. I know he is, isn't he? So Jen, you're just gonna have to show off. You're just gonna have to grow us some loofah and send me one, and I'll go like, look, such a checker. All right. So I hope that answers that. But yeah, do get them started inside. That is the secret, really. And I will say, because they actually are similar in kind of the way they have similar habit to squash, they also don't like getting their roots disturbed. So make sure that you're not overplanting and not over transplanting them too much, the loofahs. Okay. Greetings from the west side of the Rockies. Thompson Nicola. Oh, okay. I'm weeks late, but we'll jump into the greenhouse tomorrow for Jugs, Snugs, and Dahlia. Oh, Dahlias. That'll be lovely. Well, it sounds like you're actually fairly close to us because we're just outside of Golden here. Right? Is that right? I'm just trying to get my geography brain going. That's great. I got germination. If you just jumped in, I did get germination with my jugs today. And as I was saying, jugs, if you're late getting started in your greenhouse, use the jugs. Okay? Like if you're planting in your greenhouse and you're late, like I got thousands of seedlings in here that I did without milk jugs as well. But I find that using the milk jugs helps it along faster in the greenhouse and it's less fussy because if you're behind, you're probably going to be feeling a little bit overwhelmed and maybe not have time for keeping up with all the watering. The best, honestly, for me as a person who's constantly back and forth, the best thing about the milk jugs is they don't need as much tending. So I say to people when they're about to go on vacation, milk jug is a good thing. If you got a bunch of seedlings, I'm sure it's happened to most of us who are plant lovers. When you leave somebody else in charge of your green babies, sometimes they just don't take care of them the way that you want them, that you would. So if you leave Mother Nature in charge with the milk jug and the humidity, it's going to come along a lot faster. Oh, I didn't know you could eat loofah when it's young. Might have to try it then. Would it taste good though? Has anybody tasted loofah? If you've tasted loofah as a young plant, please let me know. It doesn't seem like it would be tasty, but maybe it is. I'll have to try that. Okay, so next step. Oh, and this is a question from Jennifer. And it was an excellent that she wrote to me last week. So, because I know a lot of you are garden planning right now. So first thing I'm going to say, if you're in Windsor, Ontario, you could probably start planting right now, right? But if you're not, if you're in one of our harsher regions, I know that when we get these sunny, beautiful days and the snow's gone, a lot of people want to start it's like itching to get in and start preparing their beds. I'm going to ask you to hold off. You're not doing yourself any favors by doing that, except maybe for the emotional high you're going to get from getting your hands dirty, because right now, your soil and the mulch you have on top of it is providing beneficial habitat for your buggies, okay? All your good buggies. So I have a little rule of thumb as to when I get started when I'm using an outdoor gardening. Obviously, we have different things going on here, but even here, I don't disturb the soil. I move mulch around really carefully because you might be able to see I do have a lot of bugs flying around in here, good guys. I've got ladybugs, I got hoverflies, and regular flies, which actually do pollinate. They're not pretty, but they do the job. So my first thing I'm going to say to you, if you want to get started with your gardening beds, is just give it a little bit of time. I usually wait. I have this little thing where I wait till I've seen 10 ladybugs outside. I'm like, okay, enough of them have emerged. It's okay. I'm probably not going to kill anybody while they're sleeping if I take my thing off. And I also wait until I see at least 3 or 4 mason bees and lots of bumblebees around. Once those things start showing up, I'm like, okay, I can get going. And what you want to do is you also want to wait, give yourself 2 weeks before you're actually planting new stuff in the soil. I recommend, and some people don't do it, but I find that where I tend to garden, have in the past garden the most in spring, my soil is so clay that and it needed a lot of amending because I also intensively plant. I would put compost on or rabbit manure on 2 weeks prior to planting. So there's time for all that wonderful stuff to work its way into the soil. Now, the question that Jennifer asked specifically is an excellent one because I remember worrying about this so much, but I was like, how am I going to lay out the plants in my beds? Do they go north to south, east to west, right? Because you're thinking about which way is best for light. So what I would suggest for that is not be considering a row of a plant all by itself. Think of it as a block, okay? Where if you're using raised beds, you're able to plant more intensively. So it's almost like that, you know, I think it's, what do they call it, the square foot method. If you think like that, when I'm planting, for instance, I hope you can see this. This bed here is the squash bed. It was a tomato bed last planting, so now I'm doing crop rotation, and now it's the squash bed. But I'm not just planting rows of squash in here. I did interlocking rows, and I always stagger the growth, so nothing tall. Like I've planted beans and corn down one row, in between each other, and then radishes and corn in another row, staggered between each other, and then the squash is in between those. It's almost like if you think of a dice pattern, you know, there's corn, squash, so that it's more, you're not ever going to worry about sun being blocked if you're not doing it in rows. Because for instance, if you're planting east to west, right, and you're planting corn, and then behind it you plant squash, and that corn creates a solid row of basically sun blocker, that's not going to help your squash very much. So if you kind of try to think of staggering your plants and creating the little, I almost, you know, like little companion planting triads together, and doing blocks of that, then you don't have to worry so much about the north, south, east, west, because they're forming little communities, you can say, with a tall thing in the middle and the shorter things around it. Does that make sense, Jennifer? Let me know if it doesn't, because you know I'll get back to you. Even if we run out of time here tonight, you know I'll get back to you about that one. But that's when I started finding I got my best results, because I did do tests the first couple of years. I would run my rows before I started doing companion planting and more chaos gardening kind of style. I would do rows. One year I would do north-south. One year I would do east-west. And I found that when I saw my best results is when I stopped thinking of it that way and started thinking of it as a clusters of plants that I was moving. And then it didn't matter so much. You might notice this bed over here, like it's just a whole bunch of lushness, right? But in that bed, that's sort of my brassica mustard bed. I've got everything. I literally, except for the extremely expensive broccolini seeds, where I only had like 12 of them. So those are dispersed very, very specifically. The rest of those seeds, I literally went, this is what I want. I put a little handful of each of a mix of it and sprinkled it. So the plants are coming up of their own volition where they're going to do best. You maybe will use more seed that way because some things won't do as well, but the plants that do well, they thrive there. Like, I wish we'll figure out, my little tech wizard we're going to get him to show me how I can like bring up another camera, just because this is on my computer right now, so I can give you better views of some of the stuff more specifically. But the chaos gardening and companion plant gardening, you're going to have plants thriving, okay? And we're using far less water because it's so densely planted in there, that we're not getting a lot of this respiration and the water coming off of it as we would if we were just to do tidy rows. I hope that's helpful. Oh, I knew you'd understand, Jen. Okay, great. Oh, we got one here. Oh, Dave. Do I even want to read this? I am planting in the square foot. Oh, outside my permaculture bed, broccoli, kale. Okay, yes. And if you've used it before, Dave, I'm sure you know that the square foot method and that kind of groupings works a lot better than single plant. Monoculture, it may be a way to get fast production for lots of stuff, but it's not sustainable in the long run. And your plants are going to be a lot healthier and happier if they're planted as a group. Okay, so yes, we use that throughout the greenhouse here. Now, leave it for a bit. Yes, apply compost 2 weeks prior. Block planting kits, companion planting. So I know a lot of people are still finding companion planting a newer concept. So I'm just going to run through what some of these companion planting groupings are. I thought that might be helpful for people, because we basically use 4, sometimes a little bit, sometimes more than that. So the most famous, most well-known companion planting method would be the Three Sisters method, which comes here. It is actually from the Americas. That's a method that's been used here for millennia and still is being used by the peoples of this area of the world, the first peoples of this area of the world. And that is the good old corn, because corn, and basically my best bet that I've had with that is I plant corn and beans next to each other, and then I wait a few weeks. I want them to come up, and then I plant the squash. And another one that I add into that same combo, I don't usually just stick with 3 plants, but the Three Sister method traditionally is corn, beans, and squash. So the corn provides support for the climbing beans. The beans climb, they get that benefit. They also nitrogen fix to the soil, which, because the squash needs that for the flowering and the good growth. And the other thing is the beans also bring pollinators around, because there's lots of flowers on a bean plant, and basically you get increased pollination. Now I also plant radishes in there, because radishes, particularly I found the white icicle radish, it's delicious, but leave a lot of those in place, because the flowers of the white radishes repel your squash bugs. So if you're planting squash, it's good to have the good old radish in there. I also have, I don't know if you can see it. Oh, yep. I plant lots of these, nasturtiums. Nasturtiums, I plant all over the place, but I ensure that I have some in my squash bed, because that also helps to have that a living mulch. And the other thing it does is helps cover the soil, make sure I have enough moisture, and it's also a good aphid trap. Okay, it helps to keep the aphids away from the other plants. So that's my first one. And most people have heard of that before, the Three Sisters. If you don't want to do corn, sunflowers is also a good choice as a central plant for that one. You could use sunflowers. The next bed over is my brassica mustards bed. So for this one, I have got a whole, and that's a fast growing bed, because brassicas grow like crazy, especially the mustards. I have a Mizuna that's already flowering. Like, I think I planted it a month ago and it's already flowering over here. So that the brassicas are members of the mustard green family. So those things would include things like your broccolini, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, I can't think of it, mustard greens, and there's lots of beautiful ones. I like to plant peas. I find peas do really well in there with that combination. Peas can be fussy. They don't want to be with onions. So I stick them in with my brassicas, and they're happy as clams in there. I also always put a ton of lettuce around, because the lettuces and the brassicas get along really well. And that's going to be like, we're eating so much food out of that bed. I'm picking huge salads every night. People are sick of eating salad already at my place, because there's just so much coming out of there. The next bed over is my garlic and tomato bed. So the garlic I got started in the fall. Well, no, yep, I did plant it in the fall. I planted it actually, I think I planted the garlic late in the fall. It was really quite late, but it's come along nicely. And now that it has come along nicely, I've got some nice little tomato seedlings. Probably next week, I will be placing tomatoes intermittently in the garlic. In the garlic. The garlic has developed enough that it's not going to garlic doesn't like to grow with a lot of stuff. It really doesn't like to be disturbed too much, but it does get along well with tomatoes. And the garlic does help to repel the bad stuff for the tomatoes. A lot of the bugs that like to eat tomatoes do not like to be around garlic, and so I'm going to plant them quite intensively in there. I'm also putting parsley, and I'm also putting basil in that bed. Okay, so that's a tomato, garlic, basil, parsley bed. That's a nice little combo plant of plants. The last bed over is one of my favorite combos. I swear to God, we will get so much. I'm going to do that again this year. I don't know, for those of you who followed me last year, we had the squash battle where I weighed up the product between two different spaghetti squash that we're growing and see how much we got out of them. And we got over 120 pounds of food off of 2 plants. But I think that one last bed over there is going to produce like hundreds and hundreds of pounds, because that one is the potato corn. You can see I like corn. I grew up on a corn farm, so I can't help it was a potato corn farm. I love corn. I could eat it every day. So that one, I've got potatoes as the base. They're coming up. There's corn as well. And we've also got beans in that one, because we like beans too. And tons of calendula and marigolds in there. Honestly, I'm going to be putting some marigolds in my brassica beds as well. I didn't get them in the ground enough, so I'm actually starting them as separate seedlings, so they're nice and big, because marigolds, I have yet to find a plant that doesn't get along with marigolds and doesn't appreciate and do better with marigolds. So I would suggest getting this, even if you think it's a grandmother flower, maybe you don't like the way it looks, and maybe you don't like that smell. A lot of pests don't like the smells as well. Jennifer, how many times did you hit your head? Why are you asking, Jennifer? Huh? You think I got another concussion? Jennifer's asking me how many times I've hit my head on the spaghetti squash. We actually made a joke about it. I sometimes will put a hard hat on just for fun, because if you can imagine 120 pounds of spaghetti squash hanging from the ceiling here, and yes, I would knock into them all the time. And it wasn't just them. We also had Hubbards, which are like the size of my head. Yeah, it happened a lot. It was a bit of a joke. I'd knock into them all the time. It wasn't really good for my mental health. But yes, it was fun, and I'm really looking forward to having it be completely lush in here again. We did learn a lot this winter about growing 4 seasons. I wasn't brutal enough. Those squash plants, I literally love them. I had names for my squash plants, because I'm a weirdo. I really, really love those plants. And so I couldn't bring myself to bring the plants down in time to plant. I should have planted 2 months earlier than they did, because I got these great flush off of these plants, and they still looked good, but they had done their thing and they weren't still producing. And I felt like a murderer taking them down. So I let everything stay up way too long, and I didn't get my next set of planting in until the end of October. That was too late. We still got stuff. We still were able to grow. We still, but we didn't get as much as we should have. So one of the things that we learned here in the greenhouse is, those squash plants, they're going to do their flush, and then they're getting cut down no matter what they look like, so that we can get another crop in, so that we get the crops really thriving before we start to lose that lack of sun. I thought, as a prairie girl, that our biggest issue was going to be keeping it warm in here, because I know a minus 40 day is not minus 40 Celsius day is not unheard of here. And we often have weeks where it'll be minus 20 for almost every single day. And so I was very, very concerned we were going to be able to keep it warm. But we didn't have a problem with that. With the geothermal energy, with a little bit of supplemental wood fire every once in a while, we kept it plenty good in here. It didn't really freeze. What we didn't have enough of was light for things to really thrive, because the winter sun is lower, and we were anticipating, because what's normal here is sunny days, sunny cold days. We had warmish, foggy days and cloudy days, so we didn't get a lot of sunlight. So we're learning a lot. We now know we have to think about supplemental lighting. Oop. Oh, yes. Do we get powdery mildew? We did get powdery mildew on some of the squash. The spaghetti squash did seem to be pretty susceptible to it. If you haven't grown Tromboncino squash yet, that took, like, it really, really was resistant to the powdery mildew. So we're growing a ton of that again this year. It's stored well too. We still have lots of that in the house that we're still eating, that we harvested in September, and it's still good. So there are some varieties of squash that don't get as much powdery mildew. I know a lot of people go, oh, powdery mildew is not a big deal. It doesn't really harm things. You don't want it in a trapped environment like this, which isn't, we're not truly trapped. Yes, you can have that trapped humidity doesn't help with your powdery mildew. So yes, we did get it. I would try my best to manage it, as if I saw it show up, I'd take off leaves that were particularly bad. I'd say it came through here every few days and remove some leaves. But I did notice that, like I said, some varieties that were particularly resistant, and the champion for that was the Tromboncino squash. It really didn't. And how do you spell that squash name? Oh, okay. I think it's trombone. So it's the Tromboncino, I think. If you look on the channel, I have whole videos dedicated to it. It is a phallic looking squash, I'm not going to lie. And sometimes it gets this big. It has a bulb at the bottom, and then it's long. Now, if you are looking for but the best thing about, I have some technical assistance here. That is what it looks like. I know it's not pretty, but it's a fantastic squash. It's a fantastic squash for multi-use, because when it's young, it's tender and it's very, very, very like zucchini. But when you allow it to mature and it grows to full, okay, I'm going to spell it for you again. For those interested in this squash, it is spelled Tromboncino. Tromboncino. The reason it's called that is because if it's lying on the ground, it'll make like a little circle like a trombone, but we like to vertically grow it so it'll hang and it'll be a little straighter. And we found that keeping it off the ground, they didn't mold as much. Like a Canada crookneck. It does resemble a crookneck a little bit. The best thing about the trombone though is when it is allowed to fully mature and the skin hardens on it, it's almost like a butternut. Like, it tastes very similar. And so when it's young, you use it like a zucchini. When it's older, you store it and use it like a butternut. And it's really prolific if you can get it to where it starts to take off. There were so many of those hanging around here, and knocked my head on those a lot too. Like, one squash would produce 20 to 30 of these big fruits. So if you haven't tried it yet, give it a try. And if you have questions about it while you're doing it, let me know, because I've now had a lot of experience growing that one. It's super powdery mildew resistant, and it's great as a young squash and great as a storing squash. Now, with the powdery mildew, another thing, and people tell me I'm over emphasizing this, that I shouldn't worry about it, but you don't want it in a greenhouse environment. It's not a big deal out in your garden, but in your greenhouse, you really don't want some pathogen like that to be just continually going on and on and on. So we don't compost the leaves that have been affected with the powdery mildew. We burn them. I just get a fire going, we pop them right in the fire, because I just don't want it. It will, the more it's in the soil, the more it will keep showing up. I do reuse. I use tons of compost, and I use leaves as mulch in here. You can probably see that. There's dead leaves all over, but I don't do that with the powdery mildew ones. So I hope that that's helpful. Yeah, picking drought resistant varieties is a really good idea. I'm going to grow a delicata squash this year, which I'm super excited about because I love delicata squash. But apparently this variety is, I just got some seeds that are apparently powdery mildew resistant as well. So I'm looking for that. And I'm trying to remember, I think the gold nugget, there was one other squash that we were like, ooh, that one's really holding out against the, I think it was either the gold nugget or the candy roaster was also very, very resistant to powdery mildew. I'll have to double check that one, but we did notice that some squash, it just like zucchini, most zucchini, the powdery mildew loved it. The spaghetti squash, powdery mildew loved it, but there are other ones that are more resistant. So we're trying to grow that a little bit more effectively this year. Now, the other thing we're doing in here that I'm very excited about this year is we're allowing some things to go to seed that I've never been able to grow to seed before. And one of the things that I'm most excited about is our carrots. All the way over here. I don't know if you can see this huge plant. This is 2 carrots that are currently going to seed. I've got a whole bunch of little hoverflies and flies that are trying to pollinate them for me, and I am also the flowers. The flowers look like yarrow. Oh, thanks, Dave. That's very sweet. But the yarrow, the carrot flower is quite beautiful. It looks like a big yarrow, and we're hoping to get a lot of seeds off that this year. It's a biannual, which means that the first year you're going to get your root from it, and then the second year it flowers and it makes seeds. But because this is a year-round greenhouse, we planted those carrots in May. So it's been about 10 months of growth without any freezing. So we're getting seeds in less than a year. Does that make sense? Because normally what would happen is the plant would go dormant and then it would produce seeds in the next year. We're getting them a little faster, so I'm excited about that. We're also, another change we're making this year is last year we put stuff in this front bed that was transitory. Like we put tomatoes and we put beans and stuff in there, and we put sunflowers. But we've decided that because there's no way to sort of rotate this with other things, and it does get the most sun during the winter, we're making this into a perennial bed here. Do you collect seeds for next year or every time you buy new seeds? I do both. I think if people were to see my seed stash, they'd know I have a bit of a problem because I always collect, like I call it the second harvest. I'm almost more excited about the seeds I produce than the food I produce, because it's like, it's so rewarding to be able to grow on fruit from the next generation. And so yes, I do plant my own seeds all the time. We are working on getting the humidity, because in the winter the humidity got too high in here and it wasn't good for seeds preservation, but we're working on it. We've got a really great little area now where I know I'm going to have good seed preservation. But if I see a cool, I don't think I want to know how much money I spent also on really cool, funky seeds. And I'm like, oh, I'm supporting a local business person. That's okay. I'll go and I'll buy. I bought from some of the local vendors as well. There's And I go to seed swaps, and I give some of my seeds away, and I get other ones. Seed swaps are a wonderful thing. The one in Golden here was on the 15th, 2 weeks ago. It's like one of the highlights of my calendar, because every year, if you can find one near you, getting seeds that are grown in your region and swapping with other gardeners is one of the best things you can do to maintain the biodiversity of your food, well, the variety of your food, and also ensuring that you have seeds that are produced under the conditions where you're growing. And the example I've used before is, I'm from Ladner. I love Ladner. I love West Coast Seeds, where the Ladner, which is in Ladner. And so they have excellent seeds, and I do buy seeds from West Coast Seeds. But I also have a really good buddy here who grows tomatoes. And if I have a choice of getting West Coast green zebra seeds and green zebra seeds from Will, who grows them here, I'm going to get Will's, because I know that those seeds were grown in the conditions that are here. So they're going to be more resistant to my harsher conditions. What is your favorite thing to winter sow? That's a really good one. I winter sow a lot, but I still get the biggest excitement, I think, out of the hardy perennials, because sometimes those are hard to grow under normal conditions. Like, so for like sorrel, horseradish, rhubarb from seed. Like, normally I'll do those with cuttings, but if you can get the seed, the winter sowing works best. And like those native plants as well, that normally, like native flowers and plants that require that really the conditions. Like, we have cold winters and lots of erratic changes, and the winter sowing, it's like it embraces that. It embraces this crazy climate and makes something positive out of it. So yes, I would say that the hardy perennials, and I know that a lot of my friends who, I don't grow a lot of native wildflowers because, like I said, I'm a food nerd, but my friends who are into native wildflowers, they love winter sowing as well, because it's a natural we're replicating nature, which is usually the best bet when it comes to gardening. So that's an excellent question, Carla. Oh, you are lucky. Here, I don't have any nursery in my town, and only sometimes seed swapping events going. Since last 5 years, only one time it happened. Well, maybe it's time for somebody to start a seed swap in her neighborhood. Just wondering. That I know. Sometimes, like, I'm trying to get one started in Cochrane, like a really big one, because I can see how much that impact is. Jan. Oh, hi, Jan. How long does asparagus seed need to grow before harvesting? That's an excellent question, Jen, because honestly, most people buy asparagus as a crown, and I used to do that too until I started growing my own seeds and raising it with my own seeds. As with most hardy perennials, and asparagus is that's probably one of the things I most love in winter sow, because it always works. Like, asparagus can be tricky, but I never had a problem growing asparagus with winter sowing. It just comes up like crazy. So asparagus as a hardy perennial, it's one of those ones you have to be kind of dedicated, because it takes up a lot of space and it does take time. I don't harvest asparagus for, like, I wait till the third season, which is hard. You grow it one season, you wait the next, and then the third season I grow it on. I know that's too hard for most people. You're supposed to do that with rhubarb as well. You're supposed to do that with horseradish, where those plants are a lot more easygoing about it. They're like, you can take a leaf here and there, it's going to be okay. But asparagus really does, it's a commitment. So if you have never eaten asparagus directly from a garden, people say tomatoes. Like, whenever people, why do you like to grow your own food and taste better, is one of the main reasons. And tomatoes is always held up as that example of something that tastes so much better homegrown. Until you taste asparagus that's been grown in your garden. Like, when asparagus season is on, it usually doesn't make it into the house, because it is so yummy when it's fresh and it's new and it's young. So if you like that, like, intense flavor and deliciousness and freshness, and it's so tender and just it's worth growing, but it's a commitment. It's a 3-year commitment. Well, two really. Like your first year you're seeding, you're not eating it. The second year, it's sitting there looking pretty. Third year, you can start harvesting it. Always did crowns, but they put out so many leaves. Yeah, I like having the seeds. I like being able to give people seeds. I like harvesting them. One thing I will advise you about asparagus, if you are going to be harvesting the seeds, is the seeds are poisonous, which is rare, like to have something that is that toxic. The asparagus is beautiful when it goes to seed. It produces this cluster of gorgeous little red, it looks fantastic. It's very pretty. And inside each of these little, it looks like a little red berry. And inside each little red berry is a cluster of like 4 or 5 little seeds. Even the juice, like a lot of people have to harvest it with gloves because the juice from the asparagus seeds, berries, some people actually, like, it's like a rash. They get a rash from touching it. I'm lucky. I'm like the canary in the coal mine usually when it comes to that kind of stuff, but it doesn't bother me. Like I can just work with them without getting a rash or having I don't have a skin sensitivity to it. But be very careful with your asparagus seeds. I used to not allow my ducks in the garden when the asparagus was sprouting and creating seeds, because it could kill. Like asparagus seeds are poisonous, which is really weird. The berries, like the berries that are surrounding the seeds, have a toxic fluid inside them. It's kind of crazy. You don't normally see that with an edible plant, but that is one example where it is. Those seeds are potato seeds. So you know how sometimes potatoes flower and they produce. You also don't want to be eating the little things that come up top of those. Okay. So it looks like we're winding up here. I am so happy so many of you tuned in today, and I'm loving these questions. I'm liking that I'm seeing some of you. I've seen some of you many times, and I really appreciate that. Thank you for tuning in. If you have a friend who wants to see this will be up on the channel. They do them later. We'll have one going on next week. I haven't decided a subject yet, so if you want to set me some suggestions of what you'd like to talk about, or even just show up and ask questions. And as you can see, this is super casual. I just want to answer questions as they come. It's getting lighter. Hopefully I can set it up so you can see more of what's going on in the beds. And yeah, thanks for joining in. And as always, take this time to grow together today. Have a good one, guys.